Tano Sports Central will be ranking every Power 5 starting quarterback in the nation heading into the 2021 college football season. And these are going to be each of the 64 projected starting quarterbacks in the Power 5 that I'll be ranking here today. So obviously we've still got a few quarterback battles that are still going on and some that will still go on into the 2021 college football season. But that being said, these will be each of the projected starting quarterbacks here today from each of the 64 Power 5 teams. That being said, this will be a long video here today. So we're going to go in and get started with 60 through 64. We've got 64 being Tanner McKee, and he is who I'm projecting to be the worst Power 5 starting quarterback heading into next season. And of course, there are a couple of quarterbacks that could be in that position, but Tanner McKee, we just have not seen a whole lot out of him, and when he has played, which he did a little bit in 2020, it did not look too good. And that's what you're going to see out of most of the quarterbacks from about 50 to 64s. Most of these quarterbacks at the bottom part of this ranking list have not really played a whole lot. So we could easily see one of the quarterbacks from 50 to 64 break out this season. That is definitely not out of the question. So do keep that in mind. But most of the quarterbacks here at the bottom of the list, once again, have not played a whole lot. 63 is Gunnar Holmberg from Duke. And he's kind of in the same situation as Tanner McKee. He hasn't played a whole lot, and when he did play, he did not look very good. In Gunnar's case, he did play a little bit in 2020, 160 yards, 2 picks. But yeah, so it wasn't a very good season for him when he did play last year for Duke, which it looks like he's going to be the primary starting quarterback, so he's got to improve a ton, or hopefully he's improved a ton for Duke over the course of this offseason. Miles Kendrick from Kansas is number 62. He's got a little bit of experience. He played in 2018 and 2020. He did not play in 2019. In 2020, he was actually splitting time as the Kansas starting quarterback, and he did play quite a bit. He put up 640 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 picks, and a 60.8% completion rate as well. So he wasn't a very good quarterback statistically last season. Bo Allen is number 61 out of Kentucky. He also has not played a whole lot. 60 is Peyton Thorne from Michigan State. Also a quarterback that I'm putting towards the bottom of this list just because he has not, he's a very inaccurate quarterback when we saw him play last season. He had a 55% completion rate, which is absolutely horrendous last season when he did play. A good completion rate, just keep this in mind, would be anywhere above 64-65%. If you can get up to 70, that's about as good as it gets. So Peyton Thorne, of course, at 55% was extremely inaccurate last season, and really, I think he's got potential, but he did not look very good when he played last season. On to 55 through 59, we got Jacob Zeno at number 59 from Baylor. Has not played a whole lot, but Jacob Zeno, when he did play in 2019, was pretty mediocre. Jordan McLeod from Arizona is number 58. He's actually transferred in from South Florida, so it's pretty interesting to see, or it's going to be pretty interesting to see how he does for Arizona next season, considering he's a transfer. But of course, you got Gunnar Cruz, Will Plummer also in that quarterback situation in Arizona. So Jordan McLeod could be the starting quarterback, but is not a guarantee right now. But I definitely think it would be the right decision to go with McLeod, considering he's got the most college football experience. Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech is number 57. He played a little bit in 2020, 1,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, 13 picks, and also a 55% completion rate. So he threw a lot of turnovers last season, also had a pretty terrible accuracy rate. So that's why Jeff Sims is so low. Luke Doty from South Carolina is number 56. Last season, he showed potential. He had a decent accuracy rate, but he threw 2 touchdowns against 3 interceptions and also only had 400 yards. So we haven't seen him a whole lot, but when he did play last season, it wasn't very good. 55 is Noah Vedral from Rutgers. Last season, he finally got his first season as a starting quarterback, and of course, he's been in college football since 2017. He was with UCF in 2017, went to Nebraska for 2018 and 2019, played a little bit there, and then he finally was able to play a bit with Rutgers last season, which when he did play last season, it wasn't very good. 9 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and also was pretty inaccurate. On to 50 through 54, we got Tommy DeVito from Syracuse at 54, which he's a quarterback that after 2019 actually showed a lot of potential. He looked pretty good in 2019, 2,300 yards, 19 touchdowns, 5 picks in 2019. But in 2020, he regressed dramatically. He had a 13% worse accuracy rate. He only completed half of his passes last season. He had a 50% even completion rate in 2020, as well as 4 touchdowns, 2 picks. So Tommy DeVito's got experience. He's been in college football since 2018 with Syracuse, but in the end, he has not played very well. Brandon Lewis is number 53 from Colorado. He's got no playing experience, so that's kind of a blind ranking right there with Brandon Lewis at 53. But he has, I mean, when he was in high school, he played very well and also was a pretty widely acclaimed recruit. So watch out for him going to next season. Braxton Burmeister from Virginia Tech is 52. And of course, last season he was in his first season with Virginia Tech. He transferred in from Oregon after 2018. And he did not play in 2019. In 2020, threw 680 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick, 56% completion rate as well. So he was very inaccurate, which that's definitely something that can be improved, but he's definitely got to improve that if I'm going to rank him any higher next year. On to number 51, it's Jayden de Laura from Washington State, and that's going to be a very interesting quarterback situation there. Jarrett Garantano, of course, from Tennessee, transferred into Washington State, so Jayden de Laura's position at the quarterback position is definitely in jeopardy right now, as Jarrett Garantano's got SEC experience and also he's a more talented quarterback if you ask me. But once again, Jayden de Laura right now is the projected starting quarterback, at least for the beginning part of the season. We'll have to see what happens there. But Jayden de Laura, when he did play last season, 880 yards, as well as 5 touchdowns, 4 picks, and a 60% completion rate. As for Brennan Armstrong, he's number 50 on this list. Brennan Armstrong last season played a decent amount, 2,000 yards, 18 touchdowns, 11 picks, and a 59% completion rate. So he actually played pretty well through 2,000 yards, which isn't bad at all. His accuracy was pretty terrible, as how it's going to be with a lot of the quarterbacks at the bottom of this list, but he's definitely shown potential. As for 45 to 49, we got KJ Jefferson coming in at 49 out of Arkansas. And last season, of course, I mean, he put up 290 yards, 48% completion rate as well. So he did not look very good when he did play for Arkansas last season. But the good thing is he's had an offseason to improve, as well as he's been able to learn from Felipe Franks as well, because Felipe Franks, of course, was the main starting quarterback for Arkansas last season. So we'll have to see how he does. He's definitely got potential, though. 48 is going to be Jack Plummer out of Purdue. And this is a quarterback that I definitely think could be a dark horse next season. I mean, he did play a decent amount over the past couple of seasons. In 2019, he put up 1,600 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks, and a 59% completion rate. He improved his stats a ton, though, from 2019 to 2020. I mean, his accuracy rate especially was significantly better from 2019 to 2020. He improved his accuracy rate by 12% from 2019 to 2020, which is outstanding. That is a very tough task to do, as he was at 71% last season. He also improved his turnover game, did not throw anywhere near as many picks in 2020 as in 2019. But also, do not forget about Aiden O'Connell, also in Purdue. He is also in contention to be in that starting position, but Jack Plummer shows the most upside, in my opinion, in this Purdue offense. Kenny Pickett is number 47. He's the first quarterback on this list that has shown a lot of experience already. And of course, over the past 3 seasons, he's been the starting quarterback for Pitt, and he hasn't improved a whole lot. I mean, his stats have been very similar all 3 of his seasons. He comes in at number 47. Tristan Gebbia is number 46 out of Oregon State. One of those quarterbacks that's still pretty young, but he's got potential. But last season, he put up 820 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a 62% completion rate. So he did not play very well in 2020, but he does show potential, so don't forget about him. Brandon Peters is number 45 out of Illinois, and he went from Michigan to Illinois, so he's got a tremendous amount of experience in the Big Ten. He's been into the Big Ten since 2017, and of course in 2019, that was his peak year at this point. I mean, he put up 1,800 yards, 18 touchdowns, 8 picks, 55% were his stats were in 2019. So he did play pretty well in 2019, other than his accuracy. His accuracy was pretty terrible. But in 2020, he didn't play a whole lot. 420 yards, 3 touchdowns was just about all he had in 2020. So Brandon Peters, he's got experience and he shows potential, but that doesn't mean he's a good quarterback. As for 40 to 44, we got Max Duggan coming in at number 44 from TCU. And of course, last season he was actually pretty good. I mean, he put up 1,700 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4 picks, 61% completion rate, which, I mean, that doesn't sound too amazing until you look at his 2019 stats. In 2019, he was probably by far the worst quarterback in the Power 5. I mean, put up 2,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, 10 picks, which that doesn't sound too bad until you see his accuracy rate. 53% was his accuracy rate in 2019, which is absolutely horrendous. I mean, 53% is really bad. I mean, that's just about hitting only half of your passes the entire season. So Max Duggan in 2020 improved a ton, and he's definitely a player to watch out for heading into 2021. I mean, just the improvement from 2019 to 2020 is enough for me to think that he could be a potential breakout quarterback in 2021. Devin Leary comes in at number 43, NC State, and he's a quarterback that's also improved a decent amount from 2019 to 2020, but at the same time, he's not a quarterback that I put top 40 quite yet. But number 42 is going to be Haynes King from Texas A&M. We have not seen him a whole lot, so that's why he's so low on this list. I mean, he only last season threw 59 yards and had a 50% completion rate, so he has not hardly played. But also watch out for Zach Calzada and Eli Stowers. Both of them are definitely quarterbacks that could be in this starting position next season. But Texas A&M, I mean, it's a weird time for them right now because, of course, he had Kellen Mond, who was the starting quarterback for several years for this Aggie team, and now you've got a whole new situation at the quarterback position. Number 41 is going to be Ken Seals from Vanderbilt. It may surprise you to see a Vanderbilt player so high up on this list, but he's actually played pretty well. Last season, he put up 1,900 yards, 12 touchdowns, 10 picks, and a 64% completion rate. So not bad stats at all out of Ken Seals, and he's definitely, I mean, in a tough situation that Vanderbilt is in right now, he's the one key talented player on that team. Number 40 is going to be Ryan Helinski out of Northwestern. He actually transferred in from South Carolina. He was the primary starting quarterback in 2019 for that team, 2,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5 picks. Not a bad season in 2019. In 2020, though, didn't really play at all, so that was kind of unfortunate for him. But in 2019, he played pretty well, so I do expect Ryan Helinski to come back and play pretty well for Northwestern next season. It'll be interesting to see what happens there for sure. On to 35 through 39. At number 39, we got Sam Hartman out of Wake Forest. Last season, he put up 2,200 yards, 13 touchdowns, 5 picks, 58% was his completion rate as well. So he played pretty well for Wake Forest last season. In 2019, that was really kind of the weird year for Sam Hartman, of course, because he had that one big season of Jamie Newman when Jamie Newman was in Wake Forest. So Sam Hartman didn't play much in 2019, but he also played a lot in 2018. So he's a pretty experienced quarterback, but at the same time, he hasn't improved a whole lot. He's played decently, but his accuracy rate is not very good, and he's very consistent as well. So he hasn't improved a whole lot. I don't expect too much out of him. Dylan Morris is number 38 out of Washington. He is definitely a quarterback that I think can go much higher on this list, but we just have not seen him that much yet to put him up there. But he put up 900 yards last year, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks, 61% was his completion rate. 37 is Connor Bazelak, of course, from Missouri. And last season, he played decently. It was his first season, of course, at the starting quarterback position in college. He put up 2,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6 picks, and also a 67% completion rate. So the accuracy here is pretty good from Bazelak. And overall, I mean, statistically, he was a pretty good quarterback, but he does not, I mean, his turnover rate is not very good as well. So you can't forget about that. But he's definitely a quarterback to watch out for next season in the SEC. As for 36, it's going to be Chase Garbers out of California. And of course, last season, he was definitely a quarterback that I thought could be a huge breakout quarterback. I mean, just looking at him in 2019, the amount that he improved from 2018 to 2019 was significant. And also in 2019, he played pretty well. I mean, his touchdown interception ratio was excellent at 14-3, but in 2020, didn't really capitalize on that. He was kind of disappointing in my opinion, but I definitely think Chase Garbers still has got potential for improvement. 35 is going to be Phil Dracovic from Boston College. Last season, he put up 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 5 picks, and he actually came in from Notre Dame after 2019. That's something that I learned in doing this video. But yeah, Phil Dracovic obviously in 2020 played pretty well, and he's definitely a quarterback that I think is very overlooked. Do not forget about him if you're playing him next season. As for 30 to 34, at number 34, we got Spencer Petras, and this is really where the quarterbacks start to get much more well-known and also much better, I would say, as well. Once again, in the 30s, that's where you kind of got that transition period from decent quarterbacks to good quarterbacks. Spencer Petras is number 34. He put up 1,500 yards last season, 9 touchdowns, 5 picks, and also a 57% completion rate. So his accuracy was not very good, but he definitely shows potential. Graham Mertz is number 33. This may be a little bit lower than you may expect out of Graham Mertz, but he's also kind of in the same situation where we haven't seen him a whole lot. In 2020, of course, he had that weird situation where he suddenly had to take over for Jack Cohn full time, and he was still a pretty young quarterback, so his stats were not very good, but he was slightly better than Spencer Petras, 61% completion rate, 1,200 yards as well. Anthony Brown comes in at number 32. Of course, it's also a very interesting situation in Oregon because, of course, they had Tyler Shough, who was their starting quarterback in 2020, but then he transferred to Texas Tech. We'll get to him in a second. But Anthony Brown, he comes in from Boston College. He played in Boston College from 2017 to 2019, and he transferred in for 2020 to Oregon. So he's got a decent amount of experience. I mean, he played quite a bit for Boston College between 2017 and 2019, and he also played pretty well. I mean, his accuracy rate was pretty terrible, but his touchdown interception ratios were pretty good. Tyler Shough is number 31, speaking of which. He transferred from Oregon to Texas Tech this offseason, and he played pretty well for Oregon last year. 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 picks, and a 64% completion rate. So his stats were pretty average, but I definitely think he brings more potential to Texas Tech going into next season. Will Rogers from Mississippi State is number 30, and he's also a quarterback that I think has got a huge amount of upside. I mean, last season he put up nearly 2,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 7 picks. His accuracy was great at 69.1%. You also can't forget about Jack Abraham, Southern Miss transfer coming in for the season for Mississippi State. He's definitely got potential to take some time from Will Rogers this upcoming season. Now for 25 through 29, at number 29, we got Malik Cunningham from Louisville. And last season he played pretty well, 2,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 12 picks, 64% accuracy rate as well. So he's definitely steadily improved over the course of his career with Louisville. He's been around since 2018, and he continues to improve steadily once again. He's a pretty good quarterback, but he still cracks top 30, but this is kind of where I think he should stay for now. Cade McNamara from Michigan is number 28. We haven't seen him a whole lot, but he was very promising when we did see him last season. 425 yards, 5 touchdowns, and a 61% accuracy rate with no interceptions, by the way. So overall, played pretty well last season when he did play. We didn't see him once again a whole lot, but he definitely shows potential. 27 is Skylar Thompson from Kansas State. Definitely one of the more experienced quarterbacks on this list. He's been a starter off and on for the past 4 years, since 2017, and this is his 5th year. So obviously he's been a quarterback for Kansas State for a long time. He's got a lot of experience, but he hasn't improved a lot. That's the thing about him, is he's been pretty consistent with where he's been, and so there's no major upside with Skylar Thompson, but this is definitely a quarterback that can still do some damage in the Big 12. So obviously in 2020 didn't play a whole lot, 620 yards, 4 touchdowns, a 62% completion rate as well. So not terrible stats. In 2019 he really played well all around, 2,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks. Once again, the accuracy has not been as good though for Skylar Thompson, but he definitely is good enough of a quarterback to lead Kansas State to a good season. Jared Dahey from West Virginia is number 26. Of course, he transferred in from Bowling Green after 2018, so he's been in college football since 2017. With Bowling Green in 2017 and 18, then West Virginia starting in 2019. And he has also steadily improved over the course of the past few seasons, and he's more accurate than Skylar Thompson. That's the main reason why he is slightly ahead of Skylar Thompson on this list. But Jared Dahey definitely shows potential here. Last season, he played very well, probably the best season of his career so far. 2,500 yards, 14 touchdowns, 4 picks, and a 64% completion rate. 25 is Harrison Bailey out of Tennessee. We haven't really seen him a whole lot either, but he's kind of in the same situation as Cade McNamara, where he shows a lot, or has shown a lot of potential, even though he hasn't played a whole lot. Last season, he put up 570 yards, 4 touchdowns, and also a 71% completion rate when he did play. So Harrison Bailey, watch out for him. He's definitely a quarterback to watch out for, and if he can play well, I mean, who knows? Tennessee could be a pretty good team in the coming seasons. Now on to 20 through 24. We got Adrian Martinez coming in at 24 from Nebraska. And of course, this is a quarterback that his freshman year, he was outstanding, really looked like a promising quarterback, 2,600 yards back in 2018 and a 65% completion rate. But ever since then, he hasn't really been the same. I mean, in 2019, he had a very down year. He was significantly worse from 2018 to 2019. And in 2020, I mean, his accuracy was pretty good, 71%, which is, once again, outstanding. That's a great rate. But his turnover problem was just terrible. I mean, he put up 1,000 yards last season, 4 touchdowns, and 3 picks, and he fumbled the ball a lot last season. So Adrian Martinez, the turnover problem is a big issue for him, but his accuracy is improving. and I definitely think he shows upside. 23 is Casey Thompson from Texas, also another quarterback we haven't seen much, but he was very promising when he did play. So he's been with Texas since 2019, 2020. He played a little bit there, 225 yards, 6 touchdowns. So obviously he definitely shows potential, but Casey Thompson I definitely think is a quarterback that is a definite wild card. I mean, he could easily be a huge standout next season. I could definitely see Casey Thompson potentially breaking top 15, maybe even a top 10 quarterback in the nation next year. But at the same time, we haven't seen him a whole lot, so I got to be a little bit more conservative with him. But watch out for him next season. McKenzie Milton is number 22 from Florida State. Obviously, McKenzie Milton was an outstanding quarterback from 2016 to 2018 for UCF. He played outstanding for the Knights, and of course, he had that terrible injury at the end of 2018. It took him out of 2019 and 2020. So we have not seen McKenzie Milton in the past couple of years. But once again, when he played back in 2018 and for UCF, and he was outstanding. Just reading off his stats in 2017, especially, he had 4,000 yards, 37 touchdowns, 9 picks, and a 67% completion rate. So McKenzie Milton is obviously talented. It's just a matter of how well he's going to be able to recover. Talia Tagovailoa is number 21 from Maryland. Also quarterback that I definitely think has got some of the most upside in the nation. I mean, we've seen what Tua was able to do. Talia last season played decently. He wasn't outstanding, but once again, he shows potential. He had 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and a 62% completion rate. Emory Jones is number 20, and this is really where the quarterbacks start to get good. We got Emory Jones, of course, who has played off and on over the past 3 years for Florida, but I think he definitely shows a huge amount of potential with Florida, and obviously he's been under Kyle Trask, and he's been able to learn from him, which Kyle Trask was a very underrated quarterback over the past couple of years. So, but yeah, Emory Jones, I like him a lot. I definitely think he's got potential. On to 15 through 19, we got Spencer Sanders coming in from Oklahoma State at number 19, and he is definitely a quarterback that I think has got a lot of upside going into next season. And obviously, the Big 12 is actually stacked with quarterbacks next season. Brock Purdy, Spencer Rattler, and Spencer Sanders. Don't forget about him as well. He's played pretty well over the past 2 seasons, and he's stayed pretty consistent as well. He's definitely still improving, though. Number 18 is going to be Charlie Brewer from Utah. And, of course, this is kind of a surprise here. Charlie Brewer used to be with Baylor over the past 4 seasons, 2017 to 2020. He was with Baylor, but out of nowhere, he decides to transfer to Utah, which for Utah, this is a great thing. I mean, Charlie Brewer played very well with Baylor, especially in 2019 when Baylor was actually a top 10 team for a little while in that season. So Charlie Brewer does have experience in the top 10, and he also has got a tremendous amount of college football experience. Once again, this is his 5th year of college football coming up here, and he's played very consistently over the past 4 years. His accuracy's been pretty good. He's been right around the 63-64% mark and slightly higher in a couple of seasons. But yeah, Charlie Brewer definitely a quarterback to watch out for next season. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is number 17. DTR last season was very good in the accuracy department. He had a 65% completion rate as well as 12 touchdowns, 4 picks. So his ratio there was pretty good. And overall, he's definitely still an improving quarterback. That's why I definitely think he's got upside to be at number 17. I mean, his stats don't look outstanding right now, but I mean, the amount that he's improved over the past couple of seasons definitely shows, and I think DTR is definitely a quarterback to watch out for next season with UCLA. Bo Nix is number 16 from Auburn, and he last season, of course, in 2019, he played very well considering, he was jumping into a great Auburn team, and he was a true freshman in 2019 as well. And of course, back in 2019, he played pretty well, and last season his completion rate was slightly better than in 2019, not by much though. He's been still under 60% for 2019 and 2020, but his yardage has been very good. Obviously, he's a great dual threat quarterback, so Bo Nix, I like him quite a bit. I definitely think he's a player to watch out for next season, and especially if he can improve his accuracy, watch out for Bo Nix. Jaden Daniels is number 15. Definitely a very underrated quarterback. In 2019, his stats speak for himself. 2,900 yards, 17 touchdowns, 2 picks. So overall, he played very well in 2019. 2020, he was a bit of a disappointment, which obviously in the Pac-12, the 2020 season was hardly even a season, just because of, Arizona State, for example, only played 4 games last season. So But Jaden Daniels definitely, I think, shows tremendous amount of potential, tremendous amount of upside. I like him quite a bit. I think Jaden Daniels and that offense in Arizona State definitely needs to be watched out for next season. On to 11 through 14 now. At number 14, we got Max Johnson. These top 15 quarterbacks, I mean, these are all guys that you're definitely going to be hearing the names of quite a bit next season. Max Johnson from LSU is number 14, and of course you got Myles Brennan also in there. If Myles Brennan does start, he'll probably be in the same position that Max Johnson is in at number 14 for LSU. I mean, both quarterbacks are pretty similar. Max Johnson was slightly better last season than Myles Brennan. I mean, of course, Myles Brennan was injured for a little while there, but Max Johnson, 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick. So those stats are pretty good. His accuracy rate was not very good, but once again, I mean, for him being a first-year quarterback, that definitely can be improved. Tanner Morgan is number 13 from Minnesota. 2019 was his big standout season. I mean, after 2019, he was looking like a potential Heisman candidate. I mean, he put up 3,200 yards, 30 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a 66% completion rate in 2019. He also led Minnesota to that outstanding season in 2019. 2020 was absolutely horrendous for him, probably the worst year out of his 3 seasons of playing college football. Only 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 picks, 57%. So he was he was a huge letdown last season, probably one of the biggest disappointments if you ask me, but I still think, I mean, Tanner Morgan, we saw him in 2019. We've seen where he can be. If he can get back to that position, he is a dangerous quarterback. And the reason why he's number 13, I mean, he was probably a top 5 quarterback in 2019. I would argue like top 5, top 7 is definitely within reason. I mean, in 2019, but Tanner Morgan, after his 2020 season, I'm going to be a little more conservative on him, but he's definitely a quarterback that's got top 10 upside for sure. Sean Clifford is number 12 from Penn State. He's kind of in the same situation as Tanner Morgan. Had a great 2019 season. 2020 wasn't as good, but Sean Clifford did have a better 2020 season than Tanner Morgan, that's for sure. 1,800 yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 picks, and a 60% completion rate for him. Number 11 is going to be CJ Stroud, Ohio State. We have not seen him a whole lot. I mean, him and Bryce Young are both at the top of this list just because of how widely acclaimed they are across the nation as recruits. And I mean, they both played outstanding in high school, so there's no reason to believe that why CJ Stroud wouldn't be a top 15 quarterback. So CJ Stroud comes in at number 11. He's definitely got top 10 potential. I mean, we saw Justin Fields last year. And CJ Stroud definitely, I think, looks a lot like him. And I think CJ Stroud is definitely a player to watch out for. On to the top 10. Number 10, we got Bryce Young, Alabama. Once again, as I just said, he's a former high school 5-star. I saw a stat. He's already got like over $1 million in NIL deals, which is absolutely insane. I mean, he's coming right out of high school. He's still a teenager. And this guy is pretty much a millionaire. So it's pretty insane to see that. But Bryce Young, I mean, he deserves it. He's got a ton of talent. He shows definitely top 5 quarterback upside this upcoming season. And I think, I mean, of course, in 2020, we saw him a little bit. But, I mean, once again, I mean, he's still definitely a quarterback that is in his early stages. It'll be very interesting to see how he does heading into the 2021 season. On to number 9, we got Matt Corral. Last season, he was with Ole Miss. And, of course, I mean, if you look at this player, this is definitely someone who has improved a ton over the course of his career. 2018 really wasn't known. I mean, in 2019 as well, I mean, his stats were not even very good. 1,300 yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks, 59% completion, which, I mean, in 2019, those are stats that you would definitely not look at and be amazed at. But in 2020, I mean, this guy improved so much from 2019 to 2020. It's pretty insane. I mean, he improved his completion rate by 11%, nearly 12%. And I mean, he also had outstanding stats. I mean, 3,300 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 picks. I mean, he threw 29 touchdowns last season. That is, I mean, this is a very talented quarterback, potentially one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the nation going into next season right here. I mean, Matt Corral is definitely somebody that I think can lead Ole Miss to a great season here in 2021. On to number 8, we got Brock Purdy from Iowa State, also a quarterback that has been pretty overlooked, I would say. I mean, of course, if you look at the Big 12, the first name that you'll probably think of is Spencer Rattler, and I mean, rightfully so. He's an outstanding quarterback, but Brock Purdy, don't forget about him. Last season, he put up 2,700 yards, 19 touchdowns, 9 picks. In 2019, he put up 27 touchdowns, 3,900 yards, which, I mean, 2020, of course, it was kind of a weird season. I mean, Brock Purdy definitely shows potential. I mean, he's still improving for sure. He's getting better and better, and I definitely think Brock Purdy has got potential to potentially put up, I'd say, 4,000, 4,500 yards, something in that range next season. I mean, he's got a ton of potential, and I like him a lot. Number 7 is going to be DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson. We did see him a little bit last season when he took over for Trevor Lawrence when Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID. So he played against Notre Dame, Boston College. I think he played 2 or 3 games last season. He played pretty well, though. He didn't throw a single interception, 900 yards, 5 touchdowns, 67% completion rate as well. So Clemson continues with the great quarterbacks. I mean, DJ Uiagalelei looks, I don't know if I want to say the next Trevor Lawrence, but he's definitely a great quarterback that should lead Clemson to, once again, another national contending season for sure. Number 6 is going to be Kedon Slovis, USC. Of course, Kedon Slovis has been definitely a very hyped up quarterback since 2019 when he had that outstanding season, 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 9 picks, 71, nearly a 72% completion rate. 2020, he wasn't quite as good. I mean, he played pretty well, but obviously when you have a shortened season like USC did, that was kind of bound to happen. But Kedon Slovis definitely shows potential as well next season. I like him a lot. Watch out for Kedon Slovis for sure. I mean, in the Pac-12, this is going to be the one guy you're going to be hearing of pretty much nonstop. Number 5, on to the top 5. We got Michael Penix, Indiana. If you don't follow college football much, you may be surprised at this one, but yes, Indiana has got an outstanding quarterback. And this player does bring up a couple question marks. I mean, in 2019, he took over for Peyton Ramsey, and he took over for the second half of the season, and he played outstanding in 2019. 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, nearly 69% completion rate as well. Michael Penix, in 2019 when he came onto the scene, that's when Peyton Ramsey transferred to Northwestern just because of, the entire program was just seeing how much potential Michael Penix had. 2020, he did disappoint a bit. He put up a decent touchdown interception ratio, didn't turn over the ball very much, but his accuracy was really not good. 56% was his completion rate. So, yeah, he was not very good in the accuracy department last season, but I think next season he's definitely, if he can improve this offseason as he has been, he's continuing to improve. Michael Penix is definitely a name to watch out for. Number 4 is going to be D'Eriq King from Miami, and this is a quarterback that, of course, transferred in from Houston. He transferred in from Houston after 2019 and went into Miami, which obviously when he moved into Miami, that was going to be a huge transfer there, and probably one of the bigger transfers of last offseason, because if you look at his 2018 stats with Houston, he was outstanding. He was a huge standout quarterback, 2,900 yards, 36 touchdowns, 6 picks back in 2018, with a 64% completion rate as well. So he had pretty outstanding stats in 2018. So when he transferred into Miami, everyone knew that he was going to be a big impact player, which he was last season for sure. 2,600 yards, 23 touchdowns, 5 picks last year for the Hurricanes, as well as, once again, a 64% completion rate. So, this is really, these top 4 quarterbacks are definitely going to be your major standouts next season. You'll be hearing these names a lot going into next year, which, with D'Eriq King especially, I think this is a quarterback that I could definitely see being a Heisman contender just because of, for him going into Miami and doing as well as he has, it's pretty amazing. Number 3 is going to be JT Daniels from Georgia, and it may confuse you to see him this high, but if you hear me out here, if you look at 2020, 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, 2 picks, 67% completion rate, pretty good stats overall until you realize, this Georgia team was undefeated with JT Daniels as the starter last season, and of course, they did take a couple of losses, but JT Daniels obviously was injured for the first half of last season, so when he was able to come in for Georgia, he played very well, and he led Georgia to a great finish to the season. So that's what makes Georgia scary about next season, is because JT Daniels is he's shown what he can do. So watch out for him next season. 2018, of course, that was his first season. He put up some great stats back then as well. His accuracy rate wasn't as good in 2018, but it's very good now at 67%. So that's a big reason why you should watch out for JT Daniels. Number 2 is going to be Sam Howell. It may surprise you actually to see Sam Howell at number 2 instead of number 1. Most lists have Sam Howell at the number 1 position, but which Sam Howell, huge respect to him. He's an outstanding player. The 2 seasons that he's played in college football have just been outstanding. 2019, 3,600 yards. That was his true freshman season, by the way. 3,600 yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a 61% completion rate. Fast forward to 2020, basically the same stats. Only difference is that he increased his accuracy rate by 7%. So watch out for this player. This is definitely going to be a huge impact player in the ACC next season and in the nation as well. I mean, I could see the Tar Heels definitely being a national contender with this player under center. And now number 1, it's going to be Spencer Rattler, Oklahoma. And the main reason why I've got Oklahoma's Spencer Rattler number 1 is just because of the amount of potential that he is showing right now. I mean, 2020, first season as a starting quarterback, 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a 68, if you round up, % completion rate, which is absolutely outstanding out of a freshman quarterback. Which, if Spencer Rattler stays healthy, this is a quarterback that could easily be like the next Trevor Lawrence. I mean, we could easily see that for sure. I mean, he's definitely gonna be a Heisman contender. He's got so much talent here, and for him, I mean, once again, in his first season as a starting quarterback to put up the stats like he did, I mean, it's pretty outstanding. Spencer Rattler is definitely, I would say, the best quarterback in the nation heading into next season. But once again, I mean, each of the top 4, top 5 quarterbacks on this list are each going to be widely acclaimed across the nation over the course of the 2021 season, but especially Spencer Rattler. I mean, this player is pretty outstanding, which you could also see. I mean, if you look at the beginning parts of 2020, I mean, Spencer Rattler did not look very good. I mean, it's safe to admit that, but the amount that he improved over 2020 is almost scary because, I mean, if you look at the amount that he improved, he's got so much momentum now going into 2021. So, and I mean, the amount of talent that's on that Oklahoma team as well, I could see the Sooners potentially winning the national championship game next season, which it would be pretty amazing if that happened, especially with Spencer Rattler still being as young as he is. But definitely watch out for Spencer Rattler. Definitely a major impact player going into next season, and I like him a lot, as you can tell. Anyway, that being said, that wraps it up for today for my Power 5 quarterback rankings. This was a pretty tough list to make. Obviously, I mean, I could argue in the top, like once again, to the top 40 of these quarterbacks out of the 64 Power 5 teams. I mean, the top 40 are all very talented quarterbacks. And I mean, if you're a Power 5 college quarterback, obviously you're very talented. I mean, there are just some that are huge standouts, such as Spencer Rattler, than others. But once again, though, I mean, there's still several quarterbacks that are even at the bottom of this list that I'd be watching out for just because we haven't seen them a whole lot. That's kind of the great thing about college football is we see breakout players year in, year out. So, but anyway, that being said, that wraps it up for today. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this list, and I appreciate you guys all sticking around. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you guys later.